What's up, my wizards? It's that weird man again, Dev here from Mtg. We like it magic, and today there's some Modern Horizon spoilers for you. It's true, we got a bunch of them, as a matter of fact. Sorry it took so long to get this first spoiler video out. I had a day today, but enough about me. You don't want to hear about that. Let's talk about some cards. Let's talk about Headless Specter first. This is kind of like a Hypnotic Specter. It's a really sweet callback. 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a 2/2 flying Specter, and it has Hellbent. So we're just really going over all the mechanics here. Hellbent, whenever Headless Specter deals combat damage to a player, if you have no cards in hand, that player discards a card at random. So the question is, does Pauper Mono Black want this? You know, it's a pretty low to the ground deck. It can empty its hand when it wants to. Shouldn't be too hard to go Hellbent. And a Hypnotic Specter is quite good. Seems to me, I don't know if that's a controversial statement, but I think Hypnotic Specter is a pretty decent card for Pauper. Plus, like, late in the game, you're almost guaranteed to not have any cards in your hand, but I guess the opponent is too. Like, my one issue with this is that you have to go, like, way under them in terms of hand size to actually make this work, and it might not be worth it, you know, but here's a body on the battlefield that can end up being like a 2 or 3 for 1. When it's all said and done, your opponent kind of has to remove it, especially if you have like 1 or no cards in your hand. And it might actually go pretty well in like the Gray Merchant deck too. So, I mean, there's a lot of cool things that I do like about this, although I will say Gray Merchant's 5 mana, so that kind of presents some issues when playing this card. But at the same time, you know, strong devotion to black, it's a Hypnotic Specter if you're Hellbent, and you really just can't ever deny that that's probably workable, especially in a format like Pauper. It seems like a decent card. But up next, one that might confuse you a little bit, but I've got my eye on Martyrs Soul for the format. This is 2 and a white for a 3/2 Spirit Soldier with Convoke, and when it enters the battlefield, if you control no tapped lands, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Alright, so you're probably wondering like why I'm even bothering to show my face while I talk about this card. What's the big deal? Here's the thing. I think this is actually like pretty good. I do. I think that, here's my thought process here. And I know that there are definitely like arguments against this. Just here's my thought process initially. If Gurmag Angler is a 1 mana 5/5, then a free 5/4 is probably pretty good, right? Especially when in most games, not all games, but in some games, you're going to be able to play this like before you can play a Gurmag Angler in Delver, you know, like on turn 3. In Mono White, it won't be unheard of, you know? Mono White's trying to play 1 drop on turn 1, and then, you know, 2 1-drops on turn 2 in most games. So you should be able to just play this for free on turn 3 if the game goes the way you've kind of drawn your deck up anyway. And you get a 5/4 for free. The problem is you can't attack that turn. And Mono White Aggro really wants to attack, especially in the early turns of the game. I shouldn't have to tell you, but I think that might be offset by the fact that you get a huge creature for your trouble, one that can easily hold down the fort until you untap for your next turn, a great blocker that early in the game. And when it does get to attacking, it's going to do a buttload of damage. It has to, you know, your opponent has to prioritize blocking it rather than the other small creatures that you played. So there's that as well, and not to mention maybe the most important part. If you're able to get this for free on turn 3, courtesy of tapping 3 creatures, yeah, you miss your attack step, but you also have all of your mana untapped still. You know, if you wanted to double spell and just really get all the advantage on board that you need that early in the game, you know, then this would be a great way to do it. Just tap 3 guys, play this, and then suddenly you have 3 mana to play whatever you want after that. I mean, especially since we're talking about a format like Pauper here, just to reiterate, just to clarify, then I think this might actually have a legit chance, kids, but let me know how you feel about it. Like I said, I know there are arguments against my position, namely the fact that you have to miss an attack step on turn 3, something Mono White absolutely doesn't want to do. But I think it might be worth it in some games for a free 5/4. Basically what I'm saying is Martyrs Soul is not super bad. But anyway, here's Lava Dart right here. I think this is maybe the best of the common cards today. This is just 1 red mana for an instant, deals the damage to any target. You can flash it back by sacking a mountain. Alright, so this might just not be worth a slot, you know? And I'm talking about modern burn at this point, ladies and gentlemen, and honestly, it probably slots directly into a Pauper burn deck, although I can't be completely sure about that either. But make no mistake, this is a lot better than it might look to you at first glance. I know it's just 1 damage every time that you cast it, but in a burn deck, a free spell like this is actually a huge deal, especially if you're playing like Skewer the Critics, and in Pauper burn, you absolutely should be doing that. You know, this is a free spectacle out of your graveyard by sacking a mountain, you know. It's no like Fire Blast, you know, sack 2 mountains, deal 4 damage or whatever. Like, that would be great. But it's we didn't get that. We got to like what we got here. And even though, again, I'm not absolutely sure that it's going to be worth 4 slots in a burn deck, it might be worth 1 or 2, because being able to flash a spell back for effectively no mana whatsoever, you're going to just tap a sack a tapped mountain or whatever. Like, that's so much better than it looks. We also got Firebolt back, everybody, with sweet new art, depending on who you are. I've seen people trash this art, but I didn't like the old art for Firebolt either. Just a terrible looking dragon head. But anyway, it's just 1 red mana for a sorcery. Firebolt deals 2 damage to any target. You can flash it back for 4 in a red, but you already knew that because you've read Firebolt before, likely. This is obviously a fantastic card in a limited environment, so happy to have it there. But let's go ahead and move on. No time to see cards we've already seen. Here's Goblin Matron right here. 3 mana, 2 in a red for a 1/1 Gobbo, and when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a Goblin card, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. I like it. I mean, this card is not, very likely not designed for modern goblins, because modern goblin wants to kill you on like turn 3 or 4 anyway. It's like bushwhacker, you're dead. Relentless goblin on top of all that, you're dead. So I don't think that a deck that's like that fast actually wants this, but in Commander, all day, man, like this is exactly what a lot of people have been asking for a while, and we actually have multiple different, tutors that deck can effectively use. But this is way better than, say, like Goblin Recruiter, for instance. Well, it's not way better. That's not true. I shouldn't go saying things all the time like that. But this looks a little better if you're looking for a specific goblin than a card like Recruiter does. If you're just trying to fill your hand with goblins or whatever, just trying to stack your deck with goblins, yeah, Recruiter's better, but still, just as a little caveat there. If you're looking for a specific goblin, this is the way to go, and it's going to make every goblin commander deck until the end of time, so yeah, it's obviously a decent piece of cardboard. But let's look at maybe my favorite card from our really 2 days of spoilers so far. Here's Deep Forest Hermit. DFH is 5 mana, 3 and 2 green for a 1/1 elf druid with vanishing 3. When it enters the battlefield, create 4 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. This sounds familiar. Squirrels you control get +1/+1. Alright, so let's go ahead and get one thing straight. It turns out that Deranged Hermit is probably not modern playable. Very likely 5-mana card is not. But there are definitely some cool things you can be doing with this. There are multiple ways that I can imagine, like snagging this, putting it onto the board for a lot cheaper than its 5-mana casting cost. So that's always a possibility. Plus, I like the idea of blinking it, like before it vanishes out. If you're able to actually blink this while it's on like Vanishing 1, for instance, it'll come back with Vanishing 3, get you 4 more squirrel tokens. So I don't care how competitive it is. I'm going to at least try and build like a janky, modern, blink your, Deranged Hermit, your Deep Forest Hermit, whatever, deck, because that just seems like so satisfying and so much fun. And if nothing else, I hope that somebody figures it out on the commander table. I can imagine blinking this thing more than a couple of times is going to just really create headaches, especially on the commander table. You can have like this and Deranged Hermit out at the same time. Squirrels are getting so much, and you obviously have a bunch of squirrels if you're actually able to play both of them. It's just, I don't know, I'm jacked for this card. Again, I won't make the mistake of telling you that it's a good card for high stakes competitive play. I really don't think it is, but I'm really glad to have some version of Deranged Hermit back, because it's probably my favorite card from Urza's Legacy, all things considered, and I had a lot of fun back in Urza's Legacy. Everybody tells you that Urza's Block was like the worst thing ever and they hated it, but I loved Urza's Block. I am the only player apparently in the world who loved how broken in many different pieces Urza's Block was. That's my favorite thing about it, is how broken the cards are. Turns out if you make a bunch of cards good, then it kind of elevates. That's gonna be a controversial statement, but it turns out if you make 2 good cards, everyone just plays with those 2 good cards. If you make 20 good cards that are kind of busted, everyone plays with those 20 cards instead of the 2 cards. So I actually think it's better to make more busted cards than only make like 1 or 2. And that's how, especially the first 2 Urza sets, where it's just broken card after broken card. And it's almost balanced in that way. Trust me, I lived through it. I played through it. So I don't know, I liked it. Anyway, diatribe over. This isn't a very competitive playable card, but I can be excited for Deranged Hermit, and damn it, I am. But up next, here's Ice Fang Caudill, another one of my favorite cards on the day. I really like this thing. This is a green and a blue for a 1/1 Snow Snake with flash and flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So that's already good enough, right? And it has Death Touch as long as you control at least 3 other snow permanents. All right, in terms of design, this is a knockout to me. This is another one of my favorite cards of the day. I love everything about this. But it's not Baleful Strix. And I think that's where people are going to get hung up, you know? Maybe it's just me, but I've seen a lot of YouTubers specifically saying that one of the cards they want so badly in Modern Horizons is Baleful Strix. Understandable, but at the same time, if that's the case, and I imagine a lot of people are going to be like mad at this thing, even though it's not its fault. It's not its fault that it's not Baleful Strix. But that said, I do think there are definitely good and bad things about the comparison. You know, they're completely different colors. They're going to be seeing play in completely different decks. You know, blue and black, first of all, already has access to a bunch of removal. You know, Simic, on the other hand, needs a thing like this a little bit more. The problem is that the snow-covered, you know, clause is a little bit prohibitive, even with snow-covered lands in the modern format now. I just think it's still a little bit prohibitive. I mean, yeah, you play a couple of basics, but not too many in modern, so the chance that you're going to actually have 3 other, I hate the word other in the text box, the 3 other snow-covered permanents is actually fairly low. If you do, then it's just a much better Strix. You know, it's in a color that needs the removal and it's got the flash. That's insane, but again, I think that Strix is probably just, all in all, the much better card because you don't have to work for any of the clauses on it, you know? Having to work for the Death Touch really feels bad, man, but still, I can't tell you how much I like the design of this card overall, and I think it's probably got a shot at seeing a good amount of play. It all depends on what it ends up in, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Like, for instance, when we saw Fibblethip, I said, oh, you know, I like Elvish Visionary. A 2-mana 1/1 that draws a card is at least playable, you know, and this has flash, so you can play it like the end of your opponent's turn, draw a card. Or whatever, you know, just flash it into block an aggro creature with 1 toughness. I'm sure that will actually happen a good bit. More than you might think, you know, if you're trying to just not die, this is a removal piece even if it doesn't have the Death Touch, so long as it's blocking a small enough creature, you know? So, I think there's a lot of really good things about this card, and I want it to see some play. And again, I'll say, you know, I like Elvish Visionary. If nothing else, 2-mana 1/1 that draws you a card is probably playable enough. I mean, I like Coiling Oracle, so I got no problem with this. They seem somewhat similar to me. But anyway, here's Fluster Storm. This is a reprint. We knew we were getting this. It's a blue mana for an instant. Counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. And then you Storm. I've seen a bunch of people talking about how, like, this isn't worth a rare slot. You must not know that Fluster Storm is a reprint that's going for like $30 right now. This is actually a really, really, really important, played, powerful card. And, yeah, it definitely deserves the rare slot, just so you know. But anyway, let's move on to Afon, the Boundless. It's just 7 mana. 7 mana, that's all it is. For a legendary shapeshifter, it's a 6/6. Obviously, that's Changeling, because it's a shapeshifter. And as Afon, the Boundless enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Spells of the chosen type you cast cost all 5 colors less to cast. This effect reduces only the amount of colored mana that you pay. Other creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. Alright, Commander players, you got something else. This will see like no play in Modern, I would imagine. What do you throw it in Eldrazi and name Eldrazi? That's probably a bad idea. I don't think it goes there. If anything, I'm pretty sure that, if I remember correctly, the source article for this card actually says it's designed for Commander anyway, so that makes sense. But you can tell it doesn't take a genius to realize, like, oh, there's a Commander card for tribal decks. It absolutely is that, and you're going to see it pretty much every tribal Commander deck till we're all dead, and long after, as a matter of fact. So get ready. You're probably going to pay some money for this. I haven't looked at the pre-order prices on it or anything, but just pretty much every Commander player that wants to play a tribe is going to play this card. Reduces costs on all the creatures that you play. Even if it's only by 1 mana, you'll pretty much always take it. And you get an extra Anthem effect, plus this is whatever creature type. I guess what I'm saying is that Afon is more fun than a barrel of elves. That was I'm sure you probably heard that joke already. That just seems too obvious of a joke to have been done yet. But oh, we got another reprint here. I'm trying to kind of sprinkle them, salt them in here, because we also saw Factor Fiction. It's a Fact Jack. Fact is back. 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 to your hand, the other into your graveyard. The only question is Is it good enough? Like, it feels blasphemous to ask if Fact or Fiction is good enough, but in this day and age, things have changed. Is this 4 mana thing still good enough? Probably, to be honest with you, but I do have some questions about it. One of them, that first one, is this actually good enough? If there's like a real dedicated modern control deck that's like actually good enough, then it's probably will go in. It's just an insane card advantage piece that sometimes gets you like 3 or 4 cards. Just unbelievable what this can do for you, and you give your opponent the opportunity to mess up. But this is going to sound like a weird argument, but like nowadays I feel like Magic players are better than they've ever been, ever. You know, it's like, it feels like the average skill level of the like average Magic player has gone up like up 50 points in the last like couple of years, especially since we got Arena. It feels like everyone's like Magic IQ is improved. Let me just put it that way. And since we got people on YouTube, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but there's a bunch of people, not just me on YouTube, telling you, you know, here's tech for this deck, here's how you build this thing, here's a play line that you might want to look out for, here's how you sideboard. And I think all of that has maybe contributed to it too. But all I'm saying is that people's acumen is a lot better than it was for this game back when Fact or Fiction was first printed. And I know that's a weird argument, and you can dispute it all you want. I can understand why you would want to. I'm not saying it's the end-all be-all, but just from what I've been able to observe, people are a lot better at this stinking game than they were a few years ago when Fact or Fiction first came out. So I just don't think that giving your opponent the opportunity to screw up is as good of a, you know, argument anymore as it used to be for Fact or Fiction. But we'll see. We'll see what this does in the modern format. It's not like I want to be proven right and it'd be bad, because I'm not saying it's bad. Again, it's blasphemous to say Fact or Fiction is bad. You know, you're looking at the card, you at least pay your respects, kid. You know, like Fact or Fiction is a legendary card. I guess not literally, but you know what I mean. In the game of Magic the Gathering. And yes, it's undeniably good, but is the modern format a little too overpowered for it? We'll have to see. Let me know how you feel. Anyway, up next, brand new card. Here's Seasoned Pyromancer. 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for a 2/2 human shaman. And when it enters the battlefield, you discard 2 cards, then you draw 2 cards. For each non-land card discarded this way, create a 1/1 red elemental creature token. And if you needed more, you can pay 5, 3 and 2 red to exile Seasoned Pyromancer from your yard and create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. So this card looks very, very good. I've seen some people underwhelmed by it. And yeah, it's not Young Pyromancer, which is ironic. You know, apparently Young Pyromancer peaked in like 8th grade, or however old Young Pyromancer is. You know, because I don't know that this Pyromancer has gotten better with age. Let me just put it that way. But it is spicy. It is seasoned, as it were. You know, there are some really cool things about this. You know, first of all, you got no cards in your hand when you play this. You just draw 2 cards. Pretty good for 3 mana. So let's go ahead and get that right out there on Front Street. Also, if you discard like extra copies of it to itself, then you can just exile the copy you discarded and get a couple of tokens, so that's cool. When it does die, which it inevitably will at some point in the game, then you're not done getting value out of it. That's good. You know, you can get its power back on the battlefield. Yeah, it costs 5 mana, but on turns where you got nothing better to do, it's great to have this activated ability in your graveyard sitting there waiting for you. But even if you don't, like if you're not hellbent when you play this and you have to discard the 2, yeah, there's plenty of ways that you could make that crazy. Like imagine this alongside Hollow One, for instance. There's just so many cool things about this card, and I'm not sure like where it fits outside of Hollow One, to be honest. But there are plenty of decks that want effectively Faithless Looting stapled to a body. You know, like the whole thing with Faithless Looting is that you cast it twice. It only costs 1 mana. It's just a steal of a deal. And this costs 3 mana, which, I mean, I shouldn't have compared it to Faithless Looting. But, I mean, the card literally does the same thing. Discard 2, draw 2. So, whatever. But, you know, you also get a body. You'll end up getting more bodies as the game progresses. Once this goes into your graveyard, you get bodies. If you actually do discard cards to it when it enters the battlefield, you get bodies. So there's just like no wrong way to play this. There's no like play situation in which it's bad. You know, like if you're behind, it's a pretty good card. If you're ahead, it puts you way farther ahead. Even if you're at parity, it ends up dying for whatever reason, it still puts more power onto the battlefield. There's just an awful lot of good things about this card, and I kind of think it's jacked. But up next, let's look at me. Munitions Expert. You get it? Anyway, it's 2 mana, a black and a red for a 1/1 Goblin with Flash and the best art I've ever seen in my life. A little bit of hyperbole, but not much. Let's see. Munitions Expert enters the battlefield. You may have it deal damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of goblins you control. Okay, yeah, I wish it said player 2. But anyway, can we talk about this art for real? There's like a chicken and a couple of sharks. His outfit is really cool. This is the best art. Not ever. It's not the best art ever. I am way too hyperbolic today. I don't know what's gotten into me. But anyway, the art is great. I say that much. The art is amazing. But yeah, the card is at least halfway decent too. I'm a little, I don't care for the black mana symbol in its cost. Although red-black goblins was a thing back in Lorwyn block. You know, we have black goblins, it turns out. We actually have some at least halfway decent black goblins. So there's that. So I don't mind this card, but I'm not sure, again, you know, I'm not sure this actually ends up in modern Goblins decks, especially since they don't really want to add a color and decrease their consistency and probably kill a little later in the game. Why would you do those things when you just kill your opponent on turn 3? So, again, this is probably a commander card, but a really good one. But up next, we got another card that looks awesome in tribal decks. Here's Undead Augur. Just 2 black mana for a 2/2 zombie whiz kid, and when it or another zombie you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Alright, so I have a lot of praise that I want to heap on this card, because it's amazing. It's got great black devotion, good for your gray merchant decks or whatever. I like that about it. Good for your zombie decks, period, obviously, you know, in a strictly zombie deck, this is way better than like a Midnight Reaper. Doesn't say non-token. That's a very important part of the card. That's easy to miss. I mean, there's just so many good things about this. This is an amazing zombie. This is amazing. Let me just put it that way, so you know where I stand on the card. The only gripe I have is the same gripe I had about the wording, the templating on Cruel Celebrant in War of the Spark. You can just say, whenever a zombie you control dies, do this thing. And we'll get that it also applies to this. We'll get that. It's okay, Wizards. Like, I know they're just trying to be as clear as possible. You know, this wording is for the sake of clarity. But it doesn't actually, like, it's awkward wording, you know, like, maybe it's just because I've been playing Magic for so long, and this is going to sound like I'm really mad about it, but I'm actually not. It's just something that I have a tiny gripe for. But anyway, I feel like this is like slightly insulting our intelligence. Like just a little bit. Like if you just word it, whenever a zombie you control dies, do this thing, players will be like, oh, this is a zombie, so it applies as well. And it doesn't say whenever another zombie dies. You know, like the wording convention for the last how long has been to put the word other or another on a card if it doesn't apply to the card itself. So if you're going to have that convention, why are you templating things like this? Like, we get it. If you just word it, whenever a zombie dies, do a thing, we'll get it. I'm sorry to keep griping about this. I'm done. I promise. I won't gripe about it again, but I hope that someone at Wizards sees this and you understand you just don't have to word cards like this. Let's move on to Prismatic Vista here. This is one that's getting a lot of talk today. It's a land, tap it, pay a life, and sack it to search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Alright, so this is really interesting. This is like an Evolving Wilds, and a fetch land, like an actual, you know, Scalding Tarn or whatever, just like put together. And that's great. I think, you know, it's like, I actually think this is somewhat playable. I've seen a lot of knowledgeable Magic people on the Twitters today talking about how it's probably not very playable, but I don't know about that. I mean, we don't play a whole lot of basics, but there's no way the card is bad. You know, whether or not the card sees a ton of play and whether or not the card is good are two completely different questions that I feel like people conflate all the time, you know, because whether a card is good is almost a matter of subjectivity. Like, yeah, there's an objective value to how good a card is, but there's a bunch of other qualifiers that go into that. You know, what format are we talking about? What play group are we talking about? What budget are we talking about? You know, and as far as like Commander goes, this is probably a playable Commander card, and in the context of very specific modern decks, I'd say this is easily a playable card too, you know, even with the fact that there are, you know, fetch lands in that format that usually outperform this, and this can't go grab in a breeding pool or whatever, that sucks, you know. That's why it's a hybrid of a fetch land and an Evolving Wilds, but this is exactly the kind of card that we've, you know, not that necessarily, I feel like it's the kind of card that we've wanted and didn't know it. But up next, let's take a look at Force of Vigor. That's right, Force of a thing. Here we go. It's 4 mana. 2 and 2 green for an instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Destroy up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. That's a pretty good card. That's pretty good for free, for just free on your opponent's turn. It's going to keep them all off all kinds of nonsense. You know, this allows you to kill a Blood Moon too for free. You know, like you don't have to actually tap mana to kill their Blood Moon, which is one of the hardest things about killing their Blood Moon. There's just so many cool things about Force of Vigor. I mean, free spells are great. You know, I can't tell you. I know a lot of people are more talking about the other card I'm about to bring up. In fact, if there's one card people are talking about from the last 2 days, it's the next card, the last card of the day. But don't let Force of Vigor go up under the radar for you. This is also like an unbelievable sideboard piece that's probably going to see play in all kinds of stuff. Because if you're trying to specifically stop artifacts or enchantments, you get 2. You get to bust 2 things, which is good enough. That's pretty nice. But, you know, this is just going to keep your opponent from playing all of the most broken stuff. Not all, but a lot of the most broken stuff. And I'm pretty sure this even does something about like the Mycosynth Lattice and Karn combo. It just really covers an awful lot of bases for you. So this is an amazing sideboard card. Don't let people tell you that this is a bad card. I don't know why they would, but it's mostly because people are on the hype train for Force of Negation. Everybody, can't wait for Pact of Will. But anyway, this is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for an instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. This card is insane. It just is insane. Like, I've had a lot of people be like, oh, the card's fair. You know, there's a fair kind of spell. No, it's not. The card's not fair. What are you talking about? Like, the only thing that even sort of makes it fair, like the attempt at making it fair, is that combo decks, you know, unfair decks, basically, can't play this in order to stop disruption. You know, if your opponent has a counter spell or hand disruption of some kind or some sort of, you know, removal that's going to take out your important artifact, you just Force of Will that for free and keep doing whatever freaky thing you're doing. But you can't do that with this card. So it doesn't allow, you know, just debasing, immoral, we'll call them, combo decks to just go off consequence free because they effectively have a Force of Will that lets them do whatever they want. You know, this doesn't let combo players do that. So that's good. Like, that's one of the best things about Force of Will. But I still think that a free counterspell is a little much. it's a little much to me. I just worry about a free counterspell. I mean, honestly, free spells are pretty much like the most broken things. Like free mana and then free spells. Like all of those things, both of those things, incredibly broken most of the time. It's hard to do them correctly. So I'm worrying just a little bit. This is a little too good. If it didn't have the non-creature clause, it would just be unprintable. But the fact that it's basically just a negate makes this a little bit more safe. I just can't wait to see what it does in the modern format. Are we all going to be playing creature decks again in like a week? Who knows? We're in a few weeks at least when the set comes out. We'll have to wait and see on that because it's really difficult to gauge if they have nerfed this card sufficiently. I think that's the main point I want to get at while I'm hemming and hawing here. I think that the problem is that I just can't be sure on a surface level through, you know, vacuum evaluation whether or not they have sufficiently made this card worse than its source material. But we'll see. That's all we have for this one. There's going to be a bunch more Modern Horizons spoilers in the coming week or two here, so stick with the channel, subscribe if you haven't done it yet, make sure you get all the previews, like the content if you enjoyed the content, that seems pretty obvious, and if you want to, throw $1 into the Patreon, helps me more than you can possibly imagine. It's just really helps me do a lot when it comes to, you know, paying bills, and, you know, not having to like shovel crap for a living so that I can supplement being able to do this for a living. I really enjoy doing this, and I don't want to shovel crap out of a ditch. If you are shoveling crap out of a ditch, do not join the Patreon. Feed your family. But if you have an extra $1, it would really mean a lot to me and help out the channel a lot. If you click the link in the description, go over to the Patreon. But you've had enough of the pitching. Now it's up to you. It's your turn. Let me know how you felt about these or any take that I may have missed. I'm going to say this. at the end of the first spoiler video, and I'm sure half the people, 2/3 of the people that clicked on this video are no longer here. So not everyone's going to hear this. But with Modern Horizons, it is much more likely that I make mistakes during spoiler season. I know an awful lot about Standard. It's my format. It's been my format for 20 years. And as soon as cards are out of Standard, I try to put them out of my mind and make room for a bunch of other cards. That's how mental organization works. So that said, I don't play a whole lot of Modern. So you may have a lot, in some cases, better takes than I do on some of these cards. I may completely have missed something huge with one of these cards. So please let me know if I did so in the comments section. It's more important than ever that you do that, and let me know how wrong I am. So do those things, and I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.